Welcome back to another episode of Reason to Doubt, your source for all things skeptical. I'm Jared. Today we got a special one for you. This is a Throwback Thursday where we're going to post one of our old episodes that we've never put on YouTube before. The other day, Jordan and I were talking and we realized we had a pretty decent back catalog of episodes that we originally recorded in audio format only for our podcast before we even thought about putting stuff on YouTube. And so we thought it might be nice to every couple weeks or so, once a month, do a little throwback, post one of those videos here. Now, unfortunately, there's no video, so you won't get to look at our lovely faces, but you will get to hear our lovely voices. So please enjoy this episode. Let us know what you think. And remember, until next time, you always have reason to doubt. Peace out.
If you embrace doubt, then you'll question the things that you think are true and continually check to make sure they're still true. And conversely, you'll check the things you think are false and continually, justify them. And at the end of the day, if what you thought was true is true, then you have nothing to fear from evidence.
Welcome to the very first episode of Reason to Doubt. In this episode, Jordan and Jared discuss doubt, how it's been viewed in both religious and secular worldviews, as well as their own experiences with doubt and how they learn to eventually embrace it.
So, my name's Jared. I am an atheist, former Christian. I have a bachelor's in religious studies and my master's was in theology. During that course of studying, I basically had some doubt, and then that doubt led me to question things, and then after questioning, I realized I didn't have answers, and that led me down the road to atheism.
It was actually, I met Jared right at the end of that. I like to think that I shoved him over the edge.
You were definitely the straw that broke my back.
It was funny, 1 month it was yeah, he's proselytizing. He's this is wrong. Next week he's yeah, everything I said is bullshit. Just everything else.
Yeah. That's pretty much how it went down too.
So for those who don't know me, I'm Jordan. I am a mechanical and nuclear engineer. I just have a hobby in sort of first century history and religion and philosophy and that sort of thing. I used to be a creationist. The earth was 7,000 years old. Literally, the flood happened, 100% of it. And then one day, one of my coworkers handed me a book, and he's like, "You should read this because you're wrong." And I read it, and it turns out I, in fact, was wrong about a lot. So,
if only it was that easy for everyone.
Yeah. But the bottom line is I decided that I was not going to hide from whatever the truth led me to. Mm-hmm. And it eventually led me to doubting and losing my faith. So the name of the podcast is Reason to Doubt, because we doubt and there's two of us. We thought it might be cool to start the first one off with what doubt is and why it's good, and kind of gets a bad rap, especially in religious communities.
Yeah. So we want to start off with the old cliche of Merriam-Webster defines doubt as?
I mean, unless you have a dictionary you prefer. Yeah, so doubt is, I think, just in the common vernacular, it's uncertainty. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can be a lack of confidence, I doubt myself, which is kind of negative. Sometimes it's just you're just not sure. I think I did look up Merriam-Webster, and I think the third definition I like the best, which is a deliberate suspension of judgment. So it's kind of like a choice.
That one surprises me too, because I don't necessarily think of that as doubt. But the more I think about it, it makes a lot more sense. The suspension of belief or the suspension of judgment, as that puts it, is. But the deliberate thing is what gets me with that definition, because I don't see doubt as something you deliberately do, but I may be wrong about that.
Well, I think it's something that you sometimes you have to take a step back and put yourself in that framework. This is what I think, but I'm going to, maybe having that self-awareness, I maybe don't have good reasons for that. Mm-hmm. So let me kind of put myself in an open mindset. So I think it can be a decision, but it can also be just something you're experiencing.
Yeah. And for me, doubt was something. This kind of goes into our next thing, but doubt was definitely something that was negative for me, especially
Mhm.
going through when I was a Christian, going through seminary. I felt like I had to hide my doubt a lot of the times because I didn't want people to know that I was doubting, because then I wouldn't be a true believer, or all this stuff. Now, doubt eventually led me to atheism, but I know plenty of Christians who doubted, and their faith is stronger as a result of it. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. But
Well, I took some time and kind of surveyed what Christian websites and various people of faith were saying about doubt. And there's a wide cross section. Some people said exactly what you said, that faith without doubt isn't going to be strong. Doubting is a normal, natural part of the thing. So some of them embraced it, which I think is the healthier stance probably. And it makes sense because according to the Barna Group, which is not exactly a disinterested source, but they're an evangelical think tank, and so they have a strong incentive to underreport this figure. So they reported 65% of Christians experienced doubt. So if they're reporting 65, I would expect it to be higher than that.
right, they have a vested interest.
Right. So I would say that it's probably no less than that, which makes sense. But even the places that talked about doubt as couched in kind of good language, it was never all good. For example, Focus on the Family did an article called Wrestling with Doubt and Disbelief, and they said it's nothing bad, it's unusual, you have to have doubts, but then they say things like even the disciples of Jesus had to find their way through this dark, discouraging tunnel, which doesn't exactly paint a cheery picture of doubt,
Doubt isn't bad, but if you're doubting, it's bad.
Right. The fact that you're doubting isn't bad, but when you're doubting, it's gonna be awful, so try to get through it.
You may have come across this too when you're looking stuff up, but I know when my grandfather's a Baptist preacher, and in his church, doubt was always portrayed as something that Satan was putting into your life as a way to try to pull you away from God and Christ. And so it was definitely, it wasn't something that you were doing yourself. It was something that Satan was putting on
to you. Yeah. It's funny you said that because there was another website. I'm going to butcher the name, Ligonier Ministries, but they are an R.C. Sproul. I think he founded them. And they said almost exactly that. They said that, oh yeah, doubt is natural, but it's natural because humans are weak and frail and you lack confidence to fully trust God. And it's a ploy that, literally, this is a quote, it is a ploy Satan uses to break your link with God. So it's a very clear message. It's natural, but it's only natural because you're not good enough.
Right. And I think too, doubt may be seen as good within religion, not necessarily Christianity, but most religions. But on the practical level, with the practitioner of that religion, doubt is not necessarily viewed as good. The authority figures and the holy books might say, doubt, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes down to the individual who's experiencing doubt, they're left with this overwhelming sense of I have no idea what's going on. Their beliefs are in question, which is not a good place to be.
I mean, it's understandable because if you're not kind of looking for it or prepared for it, if you've really built your entire life on this faith basis, like Titus, our friend from Proselytize or Apostatize, he says everything I think is based on this. And if you started doubting that and you weren't ready for that, or it wasn't something you're looking for, I could definitely empathize with some fear, some uncertainty, discomfort. I mean, when I started doubting my faith, it definitely wasn't comfortable. I didn't like it,
Yeah. Well, it makes me think back to my childhood, because I had the most doubt when I was going through seminary, but I remember being in Sunday school, learning about creation and learning about Noah's Ark and stuff. And even then I doubted what was being said, but it didn't affect my belief at all. I could just that might have happened. It might not have happened. But still, I was able to withhold some of that doubt. It got to the point where I had so much doubt that I couldn't overcome it anymore.
And there's probably something to be said for, it's one thing to doubt like whether Jesus said this or whether this fact is 100% historical, and doubting like the foundations of your entire life, you know.
Right.
But so that's what some Christians, I don't want to say all, because there are a lot of Christians who are completely fine with it, but that's what some Christians look at. And if you even look in the Bible, you've got good old doubting Thomas, who I think is a great skeptic and a personal hero. When Jesus raised from the dead, Thomas said, "No, I don't believe this. This is ridiculous. I need to literally put my hand inside your body." And he did, and Jesus let him do it. But then Jesus said, "You believe because you saw me, but blessed are those who didn't see." He's like, "Okay, I let you do it, but it would have been even better if you hadn't looked for evidence."
Right, and I think that kind of links us to this opposite, or maybe not opposite, but faith, right? You have doubt and faith. So Thomas was chastised for doubting, even though some people say doubt is good, but Jesus in that episode glorifies the people who are believing without seeking evidence, which I think is an unhealthy thing.
Right.
But if you want to say something about faith and how sometimes that is viewed as the opposite of doubt, maybe even though it's not really the opposite of doubt.
Yeah, I think there's this idea that you either have faith or you have doubts, and those are the two settings you can have. Of course, it doesn't help. There's a wide variety of definitions of faith. I think of faith as belief in the absence of evidence. The Bible says it's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, whatever that means. But it seems to me that faith and doubt aren't actually the opposites necessarily. Doubt is the lack of certainty. And so it seems obvious, if doubt is the lack of certainty, then it's certainty that's the opposite. And it kind of, if you just take the faith out of the equation, you can have doubts about things that aren't religious at all.
Right.
So I might be, the first time I'm introduced to physics, doubt the relativistic claims because they sound crazy. When a stick moves super fast, it gets shorter, and that's ridiculous. So I have doubts. But then when I'm shown more evidence, I get certainty. I don't have faith in relativity. I don't go to bed praying to Einstein and like trusting in his equations. Like, I have evidence to lead me to that alleviates my doubts.
Right. And that's it's interesting because so you brought up Hebrews, I think it's 11:1.
11:1, yeah.
But that says it's the evidence of things unseen is what it is, or
the translation I had was, it's the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Right. So how can faith be evidence? Like that's if that's the case, faith is evidence, then you could be certain in your faith, which then is the opposite of doubt if you're viewing faith as certainty.
Well, I think faith would then become like a brand of certainty, or like, I am choosing to be certain. I'm going to make the conscious decision to be certain. So I guess in that sense, maybe it's the opposite of doubt, but it seems like that's like too specific a category. Like, really, it's certainty is the opposite. And faith is perhaps a method to achieve certainty. But, is it a good method? That would really be the question. Because if you can have if faith is the firm belief in the absence of proof, you can have a firm belief in the absence of proof about anything you want. If you're willing to go there, it's pretty much at that point limited only by your own imagination and your own intestinal fortitude. If proof is not what you're looking is not the standard, if faith is the true standard, then you can have faith in ghosts or Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster or whatever you want. How would you choose between all these different claims?
I think that kind of gets back to your epistemology too, and what you accept as how you know things, first of all, but also what you care about, like what are your values. Like for me, I care about knowing, like wanting to be certain in the things that I believe. Right. So faith doesn't cut the mustard at all anymore for me, because if I'm certain about it, I don't need faith. I'm certain about it. And then if I'm not certain about it, I can be doubting it, or I can be like, well, I'm not confident in this yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are people like Cy Ten Broek and Kate who claim to be absolutely certain. You know, they claim that they're so certain it is literally impossible for them to be wrong. At least that's what they believe. I'm not persuaded that that's the case, but
I question whether or not he actually believes that, or if he just says it to try to.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't doubt that he believes it. I doubt that it's true.
Right.
But in any case, I think it's important if your goal is to have true beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're limited humans. We're not going to know everything there is to know about everything. So I think that while uncertainty gets a bad rap, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And claiming that you're certain about something doesn't mean that you are justified in being certain, or you should be certain.
Right.
You know? Like, I am 100% certain as I can possibly be about anything, that I exist. I am pretty sure that you exist. Like, I'm maybe not quite as certain, but very certain.
It's pretty high.
It's pretty high, you know. I am almost as high as certain that Donald Trump is president, but I'm not at all certain that it'll rain tomorrow. I mean, it might. I haven't checked the weather, so it might rain tomorrow, you know. So there's gradations of doubt. You know, it's not like a binary. Like, either you have doubt or you have certainty, and that's it. You know.
Right. Well, I think the point too of this particular podcast is trying to get across the point that doubt is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's something to be cherished and something to be used as a tool to get us to certainty, or to weed out the things that we're not certain about. So, I mean, it kind of gets to skepticism, but I mean, without a healthy dose of doubt, you're never going to be skeptical to begin with.
Well, I'd say skepticism is kind of like embracing doubt as a way of life. Choosing to be comfortable with doubt and to be systematic and intentional about removing doubts through evidence. Like Dillahunty is fond of saying, I want to know as many true things as possible and as few false things as possible.
Right.
And doubt is the way you get there. Doubt is kind of like the vehicle, because if you embrace doubt, then you'll question the things that you think are true and continually check to make sure they're still true. And conversely, you'll check the things you think are false and continually, you know, justify them. And at the end of the day, if what you thought was true is true, then you have nothing to fear from evidence. You know, all it could possibly do is confirm it. You know,
and if the opposite is true, then you, knowing that you now have been able to change your position and can move on with knowing that you were able to use these tools to weed out bad beliefs, or, you know, bad thoughts, or whatever it is that.
Yeah, like I think if someone's experiencing doubts and they're feeling maybe not great about it, I think it'd be useful to kind of ask yourself the question, if I were wrong, and maybe you don't think you can be wrong, but if you were, would you want to know?
Right.
For me, the answer is always yes. If I am wrong, I want to know it. And if the answer to that question is yes, then doubt is only going to help you. You know, because you're going to get to the truth by pursuing those doubts. And if the truth is what you thought, great. And if it's not, then the best thing about being a skeptic, being someone who doubts, is you can just change your mind and boom, you're right again.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with somebody at work today, and it was about, what was it about? Doesn't matter what it was about now. But somebody else walked in the middle of it, and he was like, yeah, you shouldn't be having a conversation with Jared, because Jared will never change his mind on anything. And I was like, you don't know me very well, do you? It's like, I've changed my mind on a lot of things, and a lot of big things too. You know, it's like,
I tend to really put a lot of deliberate thought into things I think and believe. So it might, to someone who doesn't know me very well, might come off as like I never change my mind, but it's only because I thought about it a lot. Right. But I mean, I changed my mind about the biggest thing in my life. Like, I was 100% committed. Like, I was all in church 3 times a week, you know? Yeah. And so if I can change my mind about something so fundamental to my character, and it's also been kind of liberating and humbling at the same time. Like, I was 100% certain in that. and then I found out I was so wrong, you know?
Right.
And so that kind of lets me approach new beliefs or new thoughts with a bit of humility. Like, I'm more open to being wrong because I know I can be wrong.
Right. It's also a gut check too, moving forward, that, you know, you might not apply 100% certainty to things the rest of your life, because, you know, the one thing you were 100% certain about, you
Right.
have to be wrong. Maybe not 100% wrong, but who knows?
It was pretty close to 100% wrong. I'm pretty confident that I was very, very wrong.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as far as like the non-religious aspects of doubt, though, I mean, doubt can be applied to all kinds of things. We've been mostly been focusing on religion, but I can think of a few things where doubt has helped me just in everyday life. You know, when it comes to people who make claims. So like I was back on veganism now,
Mhm.
but like dietary claims, for example, like I doubted health claims from people who were authority figures about, you know, the benefits of eating meat and all this stuff. And so I went and did some research on it, and then I changed my own personal beliefs. Now that doesn't impact anybody else, but doubt led me to make those questions. Whereas, you know, and I feel like I'm healthier for it as a result. But
Mhm. Yeah, doubting claims from authority figures, which is different. You can have proper, well-informed doubts and well-informed skepticism, and then kind of you can go have too much of a good thing and get into the conspiracy theorist mindset, where you
right.
just don't doubt, where it's almost like you doubt everything so much that you stop doubting.
Yeah.
You know,
You're
Yeah.
doubting your doubts.
Yeah. So
Conspiracy theories, that's a whole nother topic though. That's like,
yeah, we'll probably get into that in another podcast because it's really fascinating the way that their mind works. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've probably held some conspiracy theories in the past. In fact, I know I have, but upon further research and looking into it, I realized that it was full of shit. But
Yeah, and so there's doubt and action. You know.
yeah,
Yeah. So ultimately, I think, and again, like you said, it doesn't have to be a religious thing. I think religions are the most like vocal about faith and doubt and certainty. And I mean, what is it? 70 some odd % of Americans are Christian. So I think it's applicable to most of the country, but it doesn't have to be them.
right.
Truth is universal, belongs to everyone.
Now, I would say my goal in this podcast in general is not to convert anybody, not to deconvert anybody, but I think moving forward, with having established doubt is like the basis for how I approach things in life. If I could get somebody to understand that doubt is a good thing and they use that as a tool in their life to examine things, I think that would be a success. You know, if a Christian is struggling with doubt, I want them to be able to embrace that, understand that it's healthy and it's a good thing, and that maybe it will make them ask questions. They may become an atheist, or they may end up being, you know, the next pope. Who knows? But
yeah, I agree 100%. Like, I have nothing to gain by someone deconverting. You know, I think for me, I value truth as intrinsically valuable. You know, if everyone wasn't, I feel like if more people were intentional about their beliefs, embraced doubts, were kind of systematic in the way they thought, just kind of put more introspection in, the world would be a better place. And so that's ultimately, if I'm talking to someone and, like you said, if I convince them that doubting is good and they apply that kind of introspection, then that's the win. Whatever they do with it is, you know, on them.
Well, I can think of a prime example of this where, so in the past year, I mean, anti-vaxxers are blowing up all over the country, right? And
sometimes
literally. But I mean, a healthy dose of doubt in those parents might have led them to ask the questions: are these claims about vaccines and the links to autism and all these diseases, are they real? Are they justified? Is there evidence to support this? You know, like doubt would have been a good place for them to start. as opposed to just taking in these claims, on face value. So
Yeah. So at the end of the day, if I could persuade some people to doubt a little bit more, to think, to examine their beliefs a little bit harder, then I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't lead to one more atheist, then that's fine, because I'm pretty sure when we die, it doesn't matter anyway.
wait, what does that mean?
You're going to cease to exist, and nothing you do will have meaning. That's what it means.
I doubt that claim. So. Cool, man. Well, is there anything else that you that we didn't explore on this topic? Or this was a kind of a quick one, I think, but I think it's important to kind of lay the groundwork for where we're moving forward.
I think we hit all the high points, that doubt is kind of viewed negatively, but it doesn't have to be negative. I think maybe one thing I could say is, once I embraced doubts and I kind of worked through my own thoughts and eventually arrived where I am now, it was very liberating. Like, I'm a much happier person now than I was then, because I feel free to, I have no more cognitive dissonance. I'm free to think whatever I believe the truth to be. And I'm free to change my mind to whatever, based on whatever new things I learn. Whereas before, I always felt constrained. I kind of had to believe these things whether or not I liked it.
Right.
I
had a very similar experience, especially when I was struggling with doubt. Like, I had a bout of depression, and so when I finally came out of that, like you said, liberating is, I think, the best term for that, because I was extremely just elated, and the only thing I wanted to do was run around and tell people, "Hey, guess what I found out?" I was like,
yeah, exactly. And I think that's a universal experience. It's not, we happen to deconvert, but I don't think, that same feeling of liberty could be experienced by anyone, where they end up. Because at the end, you're there because if you embrace doubt and you embrace that kind of thinking, then wherever you ended up there because you genuinely believe that's where the evidence led you. And so you can feel free to change your mind if the evidence leads you. Like, you could still have all of those same feelings of liberty, even if you go to church every day,
Right. Which is a good thing. So,
thank you for checking out this very first episode of Reason to Doubt. We both hope you tune in next time when we go over our life stories and give a little background to how we got to where we are today. Please be sure to check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Peace.